This is a story about a haunting at a University Apartment 9. Before we start, please hit like and subscribe. The strange thing about Christina and Angelica was not that they went away to college, because girls leave small towns every year, with boxes in the back seat, their mothers crying on porches, and their fathers pretending not to. The strange thing was how careful they had always been, how quiet they were, how obedient they were, how much trust everyone placed in them, and how little trouble had ever found them until they moved into Apartment 9. They grew up in a small rural town in Nebraska, the kind of place where the horizon looked wider than the sky, where cornfields breathed in the heat, gravel roads held tire tracks for days, and everybody knew which truck belonged to which family. Christina was 19, smart, pretty, calm, and practical, the girl who made lists before school trips and never believed a rumor unless she could prove it. Angelica was also 19, beautiful in a softer way, gentle, church-raised, respectful, and just as smart, though she carried her faith closer to her heart than Christina ever understood. They were not wild girls, not the kind people whispered about, not the kind who ran away looking for darkness. They studied hard, helped at home, went to class, came back when they were supposed to, and dreamed about the University of Nebraska-Lincoln like it was a doorway to a larger life. When both acceptance letters came, their families celebrated like the whole town had won something, because Christina and Angelica were the girls people pointed to when they wanted proof that good kids still existed. By late summer, the two of them had made the decision together. They would not live in the dorms. They would rent an apartment near campus, split the bills, cook simple meals, and learn how to be adults one careful step at a time. It sounded easy when they said it that way, sitting at Angelica's kitchen table with notebooks open, circling prices, calling numbers, and trying to act like they were not scared. But they had started too late. The dorms were full, the better apartments were gone, and every place within walking distance of campus had either been rented, overpriced, or smelled like old carpet and beer. Christina kept saying they would figure it out, because that was what Christina did. She forced problems to behave. Angelica kept praying quietly before every phone call, because that was what Angelica did. She asked heaven to open the right door. The door that opened was Apartment 9. It sat in a small, older apartment building a few blocks from the busy edge of UNL, close enough that the girls could walk to class, close enough to hear traffic and students on game nights, but set back on a side street where the trees leaned too close to the windows. The building manager, a tired woman named Mrs. Bell, told them there was one unit that might be available soon, and when she said the number, her mouth tightened. Apartment 9, she said, looking down at the keys instead of at the girls. It's been locked for a while, but we can have it cleaned. Christina smiled like she had just solved everything. Angelica looked past Mrs. Bell toward the hallway where the ceiling light flickered once, then steadied, and for a reason she could not explain, she felt as if somebody behind that locked door had just heard their names. Before Christina and Angelica ever carried a box through the doorway, two cleaners went into Apartment 9, and neither of them stayed inside longer than they had to. Their names were Rosa and Miguel, a married couple who cleaned rentals around Lincoln, and they had seen plenty of ugly apartments, spoiled food, broken sinks, old mattresses, roaches, stains nobody wanted explained, but Apartment 9 was different from the moment the lock turned. The air rolled out first, cold enough that Rosa stepped back and crossed herself before she could stop her hand from moving. It was August in Nebraska. The hallway was warm. The building had no reason to feel like winter, but the breath that came out of Apartment 9 smelled like dust, old candle smoke, and something wet hiding under the walls. Miguel tried to laugh it off because men like him had learned to laugh before fear could embarrass them. He pushed the door wider, lifted his bucket, and said, "Come on, Amor, we finish fast." They did finish fast, but not because the apartment was easy. The last tenant had left nearly everything behind. Clothes were still in a dresser, dishes were stacked in a sink, a couch sat turned toward a blank wall, and the bedroom closet had been sealed with strips of tape that had browned at the edges. Rosa found a cracked mirror under the bed, wrapped in a towel, and when she picked it up, she saw a dark shape standing behind her reflection, even though Miguel was in the kitchen. She dropped the mirror so hard it split across the middle. "Leave it," Miguel said, and his voice was different now, lower and sharp. "Do not touch anything you do not need to touch." They threw away what they could, wiped the counters, scrubbed the bathroom, dragged bags down the stairs, and avoided the bedroom closet until the very end. When Miguel finally pulled the tape loose, the door opened by itself before he turned the knob. Inside, there was nothing but a few wire hangers, a dead moth, and a black stain on the back wall, shaped almost like a hand pressed flat from the other side. Rosa whispered, "This place is not empty." Miguel shut the closet, and after that, they stopped cleaning carefully. They cleaned like people escaping a room, fast, rough, quiet, and when Mrs. Bell asked if the unit would be ready, Miguel only nodded and said, "Yes, but you should not put those girls in there." Mrs. Bell pretended not to hear him. 2 days later, Christina and Angelica arrived at their parents', their cars packed with bedding, books, small lamps, framed photos, cheap dishes, and the kind of hope that makes a bad place look better than it is. The apartment smelled strongly of bleach, which Christina took as a good sign, and the late afternoon sun came through the blinds in bright gold lines across the floor. "It's cute," Christina said, setting down a box labeled kitchen. Angelica smiled because she wanted to believe her. "It's ours." For the first week, it really did feel like theirs. They arranged the living room, bought groceries, walked to campus, learned their class routes, and called home at night with cheerful updates. Their parents relaxed. The girls laughed again. Apartment 9 sat quiet around them, patient and still, like a thing pretending to sleep. Then, on the 8th night, Christina woke to the sound of a single plate sliding across the kitchen counter. It moved slowly, ceramic against laminate, one long scrape in the dark, and when it reached the edge, it stopped, as if something unseen had decided not to let it fall. Christina blamed mice before Angelica could say anything else, because mice made sense and ghosts did not. Mice could move dishes, mice could scratch in walls, mice could make a girl feel foolish for lying awake with her blanket pulled to her chin. By morning, Christina had already bought traps, sealed cereal in plastic containers, and told Angelica not to let a creepy apartment get into her head. Angelica tried to accept that, because she did not want to be the dramatic roommate, the church girl who saw demons in every shadow, but the apartment had a way of making normal explanations feel thin. The kitchen light flickered whenever they spoke about moving out, not every time, but often enough that both of them noticed. The hallway outside the bathroom stayed colder than the rest of the unit, even when the thermostat said 72. Sometimes, after they came home from class, a chair would be pulled a few inches away from the table, facing the bedroom door. Christina would stare at it, jaw tight, then push it back with one foot. "Old building," she said. Angelica nodded, but she had grown up around old buildings, old churches, old farmhouses, and none of them felt like this. Apartment 9 did not feel old. It felt occupied. The knocking began near the end of September. At first, it came from the front door. 2 soft taps, polite and almost shy. Christina opened it the first time with a smile ready, thinking maybe a neighbor needed something, but the hallway was empty. The second time, Angelica looked through the peephole before opening, and for one breath, she thought she saw a woman standing too close to the door, her face blurred by the glass, her hair hanging in damp strands. Angelica gasped and stumbled back, but when Christina yanked the door open, there was nobody there. "You scared yourself," Christina said, though she did not sound angry, she sounded worried. "I saw someone. You saw the peephole bending the hall light." "I saw a face, Christina." They did not talk for a while after that. The window knocks were worse, because they lived on the 2nd floor. The first time it happened, they were eating noodles at the little kitchen table, both of them tired from classes, when 3 taps came from the living room window. Not branches, not rain, not a bird, but knuckles on glass, slow and deliberate. Christina froze with her fork halfway to her mouth, and Angelica whispered the Lord's Prayer under her breath so quietly that Christina pretended not to hear. Christina stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside with a sharp movement. There was nothing outside but the dark side yard, the black fingers of the tree, and their own reflections staring back from the glass. Behind those reflections, for less than a second, something taller than both girls stood in the hallway. Angelica screamed. Christina spun around, but the hall was empty, and the bedroom door, which had been shut, was now open. That night, Angelica asked Christina to pray with her. Christina refused at first, not cruelly, but with the exhausted stubbornness of someone who was afraid that if she prayed, she would be admitting there was something to pray against. "I don't believe in this stuff," Christina said. Angelica looked toward the hallway and answered softly, "I know you don't, but I think it believes in us." The apartment went silent after that, too silent, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. The night everything changed, Christina and Angelica went out because they were tired of being afraid of their own home. It was a Friday, the campus was alive with students, headlights, music, and the comforting noise of ordinary life, and Christina said they needed one normal night before Apartment 9 turned them into old women at 19. So they cleaned the kitchen, turned off every light, checked the lock twice, and walked to meet a few classmates for coffee and late food. For almost 3 hours, they felt like students again. Christina laughed harder than she had in weeks, and Angelica let herself enjoy the warm noise of the restaurant, the smell of fries, the jokes she barely understood, the feeling that maybe fear needed darkness to survive, and if they stayed near people, maybe it would starve. When they turned onto their street just before midnight, both girls stopped walking. Every light in apartment 9 was on. Not one lamp, not the kitchen, not something they could blame on forgetfulness. Every window glowed. The living room, the hall, the bedroom, even the bathroom. All of it bright, all of it wrong. Christina's first reaction was anger, because anger was easier than fear. "I turned them off," she said. "I know," Angelica whispered. Then a shadow crossed behind the living room curtains. It moved from left to right slowly, tall enough to block the light, and when it reached the center of the window, it stopped, as if whoever was inside had paused to look down at them. Christina grabbed Angelica's arm, and for the first time, she did not tell her there had to be an explanation. They called 911 from the parking lot. Officer Bob arrived 15 minutes later, a broad-shouldered Lincoln police officer with kind eyes, a tired face, and the calm manner of a man who had walked into too many domestic calls, too many student break-ins, too many situations where fear made people sound less believable than they were. He asked the girls to wait behind him, then went up the stairs with one hand near his radio and the other on his flashlight. The front door was locked. There were no broken windows, no pry marks, no signs of forced entry, but when Officer Bob opened the door with Christina's key, the apartment looked as if a storm had been trapped inside it. Drawers were dumped out, books were thrown across the floor, dishes were shattered in the kitchen, clothes had been pulled from the closet, and every framed photo had been turned face down. Angelica began to cry without making a noise. Officer Bob checked every room, every closet, under the bed, behind the shower curtain, then came back into the living room with his mouth set in a hard line. "Nobody's here," he said. Christina stared at the destruction. "But we saw someone. I believe you saw something," Officer Bob said carefully. That wording stayed with Angelica. Not someone. Something. He took their statement, asked if anyone had a key, asked about ex-boyfriends, neighbors, arguments, roommates, parties, anything that might turn normal people dangerous. Christina answered every question. Angelica kept looking at the hallway, where the cold seemed to gather in a thick, invisible pool. Before he left, Officer Bob lowered his voice. "Listen to me," he said. "I can't put this in a report the way you're thinking it, but if you have somewhere else to stay tonight, stay there." Christina asked, "Why?" Officer Bob looked past her, toward the bedroom closet, and the flashlight in his hand flickered once. "Because whatever happened here, it wanted you to come home and see it." After he left, the girls stood in the ruined living room, listening to his patrol car pull away, and from inside the wall behind the couch came two soft taps, polite, patient, almost shy. Christina did not sleep much after the break-in that was not a break-in, but when sleep finally found her, it came like a trap. She would drift off with the bedroom lamp on, one hand under her pillow, her phone charging beside her, and sometime after 3 in the morning, she would wake with her eyes open and her body locked still. The first time, she thought she was dying. She could see the room, the desk, the laundry basket, the strip of light under the door, but she could not move her arms, could not turn her head, could not make her mouth form Angelica's name. Something heavy pressed down on her chest, not like a blanket, not like panic, but like a body lying on top of her, pinning her to the mattress, breathing without sound. Christina fought until tears ran into her ears. At the foot of the bed, a shape stood where no person should have been. It was darker than the room, bent slightly at the shoulders, its head tilted in a way that felt curious, almost tender. Then the mattress dipped beside her, and a voice close to her ear whispered, "You opened it." When Christina could move again, she fell off the bed and crawled to the door, gasping so hard she could not speak. Angelica found her in the hallway. At first, Christina tried to call it sleep paralysis because she had read about it online, and sleep paralysis was real, medical, explainable. Stress could cause it, lack of sleep could cause it, fear could paint shapes in the room. She told herself that until the bruises appeared, faint finger-shaped marks on both sides of her arms, as if someone had held her down. Angelica saw them in the bathroom light and covered her mouth. "That is not from stress," she said. Christina snapped, "Don't say it. I have to say it." "No, you don't, because once you say it, then it becomes real." Angelica's eyes filled, but she did not look away. "Christina, it already is." After that, Christina slept in Angelica's room. They pushed Angelica's bed against the wall, dragged Christina's blanket in, and lay side by side like children after a storm, the lamp on, the Bible from Angelica's nightstand open between them, even though Christina never touched it. For 2 nights, nothing happened. On the third night, Angelica woke because Christina was shaking. She was lying on her back, drenched in sweat, eyes open, lips trembling, but no sound coming out. Angelica grabbed her shoulders and tried to pull her upright, but Christina's body would not move. The air above the bed looked warped, like heat rising from pavement, except the room had turned so cold that Angelica's breath showed white. Angelica cried, wake up in Jesus' name, wake up." The moment she said the name of Jesus, the bedroom door slammed shut so hard the wall cracked. Christina inhaled with a violent choking sound and grabbed Angelica's wrist. "It was on me," she whispered. Angelica held her. No, Angie, listen to me. It was not trying to scare me this time." The closet door across the room creaked open by an inch. Christina stared at it and began to sob. It was trying to get inside. The next morning, Angelica called her pastor back home before class. She did not care if Christina got mad, did not care if she sounded crazy, did not care if the apartment heard every word. Her pastor listened quietly, asked questions, then gave her the name of a man in Lincoln. "Call Pastor George," he said. "And until he comes, do not challenge it, do not speak to it, and do not invite it to answer you." Angelica looked toward the hallway, where something had begun to tap from inside the bathroom mirror. "Pastor," she whispered, "what if somebody already did?" Pastor George did not arrive like a movie priest, and maybe that made him more frightening. He came in an old sedan on a gray Saturday afternoon, wearing a plain jacket, carrying a worn Bible, a small bottle of holy water, and the face of a man who had learned not to laugh at things people were ashamed to tell him. He listened at the kitchen table while Christina and Angelica told him everything: the dishes, the lights, the knocks, the shadow, the ruined apartment, Officer Bob, the weight on Christina's chest, and the voice that had whispered, "You opened it." Christina spoke more than Angelica expected. Her skepticism had not disappeared, but it had been wounded badly enough that she no longer had the strength to defend it. When they finished, Pastor George did not immediately pray. He walked through the apartment slowly, touching door frames, pausing in corners, standing longest near the bedroom closet where Rosa had once seen the black hand-shaped stain. The stain was faint now, almost hidden under paint, but Pastor George saw it anyway. "Did either of you use a board here?" he asked. Angelica shook her head quickly. "No," Christina said, "like a Ouija board?" "No, never." Pastor George nodded, but not like he was relieved. "Then someone before you may have opened a door and failed to close it." The apartment made a sound then, a lone knock from the kitchen wall, one tap, then another, then a third. Pastor George turned toward it, and for a moment his face changed. Not fear exactly, but recognition. He blessed the apartment room by room, praying in a calm, steady voice, sprinkling holy water over the thresholds, the windows, the closet, the beds, and the front door. Angelica prayed with him. Christina stood near the couch, arms folded tightly, tears sliding down her face, even though she made no sound. When Pastor George reached the bathroom mirror, the glass fogged from the inside. Letters appeared slowly, written by an invisible finger in the mist. Not hers. Christina backed away. "What does that mean?" Pastor George did not answer. He lifted the Bible and continued praying, louder now, and the lights began to pulse, bright, dim, bright, dim. Somewhere in the apartment, a woman laughed once, a broken little sound that turned into coughing. Angelica clutched the cross around her neck. Christina whispered, "There's someone in the bedroom." The bedroom door opened. No one stepped out, but a smell came with the cold. Old smoke, mildew, and perfume turned sour. Pastor George walked to the doorway, sprinkled holy water into the dark, and said, "You have no claim over these girls." From inside the closet, a voice answered in Christina's voice. "I do now." Christina screamed because the voice was perfect, not close, not similar, but hers, speaking with her breath, her fear, her mouth. Pastor George kept praying until the closet door slammed shut. The apartment went still so suddenly that everyone heard the traffic outside again, the faint rush of tires, the distant laughter of students, the normal world passing by without knowing what had just been standing on the other side of the room. When it was over, Pastor George sat at the kitchen table, pale and sweating. "You need to leave," he said. Christina wiped her face. "Can you make it stop?" "I can bless a place," he said. "I can pray. I can command what I am given authority to command. But some doors are held open by what was done here, and if the people who opened it never closed it, the place itself may remember the invitation." Angelica asked, "What happens if we stay?" Pastor George looked toward apartment 9's front door, where the chain lock was swinging gently by itself. "It will keep trying to make one of you part of the apartment." After Pastor George left, the girls did what frightened people always do when they need proof that leaving is not weakness. They researched. They searched old student forums, city records, archived rental complaints, deleted-looking posts, and half-buried comments that mentioned the building without naming it. Most of it was useless rumors and jokes, until Angelica found a thread from years earlier written by a former student who claimed her cousin had lived in apartment 9. The story was short, messy, and full of misspellings, but the details matched too well to ignore. A couple had rented the unit before them. Both students, both curious about the paranormal, both treating the unseen like a party game. They bought a spirit board, invited friends over, lit candles, asked questions, laughed at the answers, then kept using it after everyone else got uncomfortable. The board began spelling names nobody had typed, dates nobody understood, and finally one sentence that appeared again and again. "Let me wear her." The girlfriend changed first. She stopped going to class, stopped answering her phone, spoke at night in voices that were not hers, and once, according to the Post, stood in the hallway at 3 in the morning knocking on her own apartment door from the outside, even though her boyfriend swore she had been asleep in bed beside him. A church was called. An exorcism was attempted. The girl survived, but she was sent home, and her family never let her return to Lincoln. The boyfriend left the apartment next. He abandoned nearly everything. Christina read the Post 3 times without blinking. "That's why the last tenant left everything." Angelica whispered, "No, Christina. That's why everyone leaves everything." They called home that night. At first, both sets of parents thought stress had finally overtaken them, but when Angelica's mother heard her daughter crying so hard she could barely breathe, she stopped asking questions. Christina's father told her to pack whatever mattered and leave the rest. He did not care about the lease, the deposit, the furniture, or what the apartment manager said. He only cared that his daughter got out before morning. They packed under every light in the apartment. Clothes, laptops, IDs, family photos, medicine, a few books, nothing heavy, nothing replaceable. Angelica wanted to take the Bible from her nightstand, but when she reached for it, the pages fluttered by themselves and stopped on a blank white sheet that had not been there before. Across it, in thin gray letters, something had written "Stay." Angelica closed the Bible with shaking hands and took it anyway. Christina stood in the bedroom doorway one last time, looking at the bed where she had been held down, the closet where her own voice had spoken without her, and for a moment, her face softened with grief, as if she were looking at the death of the life she thought college would be. "I just wanted to be normal here," she said. Angelica picked up her bag. "Then let's go home while we still can." They left apartment 9 at 4 in the morning, carrying only what they could fit in the car. They did not clean. They did not turn in a notice. They did not sleep there one more night. Christina locked the door behind them, dropped the key in the rent box, and refused to look back as they drove away through the empty Lincoln streets. But Angelica looked. In the second-floor window, all the lights were off except the bedroom lamp. Beside it stood a girl-shaped shadow with its hand pressed flat to the glass. It did not wave. It did not chase them. It only watched, patient as ever, because apartment 9 had learned a long time ago that there would always be another late student, another desperate application, another manager with one locked unit left to offer. 6 months later, Mrs. Bill called Christina's phone. Christina did not answer, so the message went to voicemail. There was no voice at first, just static, then the sound of a plate scraping slowly across a counter. After that, a whisper came through, soft, familiar, and almost shy. "Christina, you forgot something." She deleted the message, changed her number, and never returned to Lincoln alone again. The building still stands in the story people tell quietly, never with a real address, never in front of new students, and always with the same warning. If you are young, if you are late finding housing, if the landlord smiles too quickly and says there is one apartment nobody has wanted for a while, do not ask for the price, do not ask when it will be ready, and whatever you do not take the key mark 9. Thank you for your support, and thank you for tuning into our stories. Some are fiction, and some are based on a true event. We would really appreciate it if you could like this video, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for a new story every day.